Why does it say it's waiting on me? Because on my end, I'm good. There we go. YouTube is tripping. Let me see one thing. Let me just see. Because I don't know why it would be saying scheduled for 10 a.m. if we're live right now. Bet we are live. Okay. My fault, y'all. YouTube was being weird. OBS was being weird. We are running a couple of minutes late. But my name is Hawk. Welcome to Hawk Soup Slide. I mean, that's really what we talk about during the off season. Then during the regular season, it's usually about games. We'll do different stuff. Probably later in the off season, we'll do like some rankings. We have a good time here. We have a really good time. Give me half a second. I'm just getting everything together. Riley, you are correct. I should have started at 8 o'clock, but YouTube did not want to let me start right at 8 o'clock. But we are here. We're pulling up. And I also just realized that apparently I scheduled this for the wrong time. It said it was supposed to be at 10:10 in the morning. No, these happen at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Wednesday. Let me just take a half a second to get all of my windows together. Make sure OBS and everything is running fine. All right, let's go ahead and get into this. A lot to talk about this week. The draft was last week. We're going to cover that. We're going to talk about some to the draft. Nothing crazy in depth. Y'all know I'm not a crazy draft guy yet. Maybe that changes in the future, but as of right now, I'm not a crazy draft guy. Hold on. There we go. But yes, the draft was last Thursday. Me and the fellas went out and watched the draft together. Nothing too crazy in terms of surprises personally. We all know Victor Wembanyama was going number 1 to the Spurs. I think where some of the interest or surprise, I will say, came in at the number 2 and the 3 picks. So the Hornets picked up Brandon Miller at number 2, and that means Scoot Henderson falls to Portland at the number 3 pick. Now, the reason that this is so interesting, all season long, everyone's telling me, because I really heavily lean on other analysts and other podcasters for like draft coverage, because I'll be honest, just college ball isn't my thing. So I miss a lot of some of the college guys, especially with how many guys were either playing overseas in Victor Wembanyama's case, or playing in the OTE, or playing in the G League Ignite. Like there were so many other, I guess we'll say, venues that prospects were coming into the NBA, and particularly in this draft. I remember we were watching the draft, and I want to say out of the top 7 picks, either 4 or 5 of them didn't go to college. I think 4 of them didn't go to college out of the top 7 picks, and out of the top 10 picks, 5 of them didn't go to college. 2 of them, I got some thoughts on the OTE. We'll get to that in a second, but I want to start out with the Brandon Miller, Scoot Henderson situation. So the Hornets draft Brandon Miller at 2, number 2 draft pick in the draft this season. One thing that dawned on me about maybe a week leading up to the draft, week and a half leading up to the draft, more and more reports coming out, more and more mock drafts coming out with Brandon Miller being the number 2 pick from Charlotte. And people were wondering, well, where is this coming from? Why is it all of a sudden Scoot isn't the consensus number 2 pick that we all knew he was, or that we all were saying he was? During the draft, or I just happened to see it on socials afterwards, like, the next day or later. They showed a clip that the fans were in Charlotte within the stadium watching the draft, and even the mascot looked disappointed when they announced that Brandon Miller was their pick. I get to an extent, like I said, I start all my caveats when talking about prospects, when talking about draft guys, and by saying I'm not a draft guy per se. So I get I want to see how these guys play out in the league, but I get why the Hornets drafted Brandon Miller. The Hornets, in my mind, just outside looking in, based on what I know and based on looking at just their team as of right now, they went for fit. I think Brandon Miller fits next to LaMelo Ball better than Scoot Henderson would. Most people are going to tell you Scoot Henderson is the better prospect. Most people are going to tell you Scoot Henderson probably is the better talent. But Brandon Miller is also still really, really good. He's going to play off ball. I don't think the Hornets wanted that. I think the Hornets want to keep the ball in LaMelo Ball's hands, no pun intended. And I think the best way to do that is to draft a team that'll play well with him. It's going to be up to argument. And it's going to be, hindsight is always 20/20 when we're doing a retrospective looking back. I think it's going to come down to, for me at least, we'll see what their careers look like. Couldn't Scoot probably have the bigger career? Probably. Honestly, the way people are telling me in terms of, I don't think they fully have a team identity outside of LaMelo Ball yet that they could have still decided to just draft for talent. But maybe they decide they really want to move in the future with LaMelo Ball, and the best way to start that movement forward is to draft Brandon Miller. Hey, what's good with you, Uncle Larry? I'm not impressed by Larry Brown says I'm not impressed by B Miller's game. I did see him play this past season, and that's what a lot of people are telling me. They're not necessarily impressed. For me personally, it's going to have to be a wait and see, because I think fit wise, like I said, I always get the caveat. I haven't seen much of them, but fit wise, to me, the Brandon Miller pick makes sense because he fits better alongside LaMelo Ball than Scoot Henderson, in my opinion. Now, one thing I did want to say about the draft, and it's not something we're going to really see until 3, 4, maybe even 5 years down the line, is as more and more players start to go in some other avenues, at least the big name players. Like I said, 5 of the top 10 draft picks didn't come from college this draft, which I don't know how often that is, and it surprised me because I remember me and my boys watching it, and I'm like, okay, the Thompson twins are from OTE. Well, who did OTE play? There are a lot of questions I have about the value of OTE, of G League Ignite, in terms of being a legitimate alternate route to make it to the NBA. Now, let me rephrase. I think it is a route to the NBA, but I think teams, depending on how these first couple of guys over these next 2-3 years that get drafted out of these programs do compared to their college counterparts, it could make or break OTE or the G League Ignite programs over the next couple of years, depending on how well some of these players fare in the NBA in terms of playing with other NBA level competition. Quick thing on the draft. Moving on real quick, we had some trades last week that I didn't get a chance to cover. Last week, we talked about the Kristaps Porzingis trade. But when we talked about it, we were still under the impression that it was Malcolm Brogdon going to the Clippers. And then we end the stream. I'm on my phone at 11:58. We end the stream. We get the notifications that the trade doesn't go through. The Clippers back out because of Malcolm Brogdon's injury history. They're still a little iffy about his shoulder. They said, we don't want to do this trade. Completely understandable. Then we get the notification that the Wizards had until midnight to make this trade happen and keep Kristaps Porzingis' contract guaranteed. At 11:58, I get a notification from Shams that am I misremembering this? That the Grizzlies now become that third team, and Marcus Smart ends up on the Memphis Grizzlies. Hey, no, what's good with you, my guy? We already talked about the Kristaps Porzingis trade last week because I thought it happened. So we talked about the Kristaps part of this. I love that Kristaps being added to the Celtics. I love that for them. He brings a lot of versatility to their team. At the time, I thought, get rid of Malcolm Brogdon. He was great for them during the regular season. Didn't play as well in the finals, in some moments in the playoffs. Eastern Conference Finals, excuse me. But I wasn't mad at losing Malcolm Brogdon. I think the Celtics are going to miss Mark. And honestly, the box score ain't that bad, even for what he does bring in terms of just actual basketball production. Regular season numbers aren't crazy. He's usually around 10 to 12 points a game, but he consistently over the last 3-4 seasons steps it up big for them in the playoffs, going from 14 to 16 points a game in the playoffs. But it's his leadership, it's his defense, it's the intangibles. It's and ironic as it is, that morning, the Boston Celtics Twitter account tweeted this nice compilation of just highlights from Marcus Smart throughout the season. And it was like, Marcus Smart, the heart and soul of our team. And then 18 hours after they posted that, he was traded and no longer a member of that team. But he legitimately is the heart and soul of the Boston Celtics. So what does that mean for them? It means, yes, they miss a glue guy. They miss the intangible guy. But I think at the very least, it gives the opportunity for us to at least see what type of leaders Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are. Because there's no argument that they've been the two best players on this Boston Celtics team over the last 3-4 seasons. But I don't think they've been considered the leader of this team during any of that time period. And I think now will be the moment, or at least I'll say the on-court visible leader during the games. It's Marcus Smart talking to, the players. It's Marcus Smart huddling people up during, timeouts, and when maybe a ball out of bounds, talking to his guys, making sure people keep their heads up. That's Marcus Smart doing that. There's going to be opportunity for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to step up and do that for their teams. We'll see if they can. I don't want to say I don't think they can, but from what they have shown me, they haven't proven they can yet. But I do think this is their first legitimate opportunity to do that. So I'm not writing them off and saying they can't. I'm just going to give them a real fair shot and see what they can do. Larry says, Marcus is a glue guy with important intangibles. That is very true. And leadership is earned. That is true. And I think part of that leadership being earned is, in terms of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown's case, Smart had earned that trust. He had earned Brown and Tatum are going to have to step up and earn their teammates' trust to be their new leaders. I think this is the year that Tatum steps up and becomes the leader. Nuno says, we'll see. For me, losing Smart was like losing a family member. I feel that. The other half of this trade, though, is Marcus Smart is now a Memphis Grizzly. Memphis, if you're a Memphis Grizzlies fan, I'm jumping for joy. You have for various things, whether it be Dylan Brooks calling LeBron James old and washed. Like, there were a lot of off-court distractions for the Memphis Grizzlies this year. There were a lot. I think adding Marcus Smart to this team, one, we just talked about how great of a leader he had been for the Celtics over the last couple of years. I think he can bring that leadership to Memphis in a way that will be accepted. Because like Larry just said, leadership is earned. I think Marcus Smart is going to put in the work. He's going to show that he's a first one in, last one out type of guy to get the rest of that team to buy into some of his leadership. That's a young team with a lot of talent that needs some leadership. And considering that Ja Morant's going to be out for the first 25 games of the season on top of all of this, Marcus Smart's going to be there to fill in some of that production, or at least fill in that gap in the meantime until Ja gets back. And then when Ja does get back, I think he can come off the bench for some games. I don't like the idea of starting Desmond Bane, Ja Morant, and Marcus Smart as a 3-guard lineup, but I can see them closing out some games together. I think he's going to really fit in and fill out that Dylan Brooks role without the off-court nonsense. Better leadership on the court. That honestly, in my opinion, he's a better player. He shoots the ball better. I think he takes still some, not the smartest shots, but I think some of that is, at least in terms of the Celtics, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, especially when the Celtics were still in the playoffs. There were some close games, especially against that Sixers series, where I was like, why is Marcus Smart the guy with the ball at the end of the quarter? But some of that looked like it was by design. So we'll see. I don't necessarily think that was Smart being a ball hog and saying, I need to get the shots at the end of the game. I think those plays were drawn up for him to take those shots, and he was willing to do it. So to add that type of guy who, in my mind, is a much improved version of Dylan Brooks and just filled Dylan Brooks' role, it's a great pickup for the Memphis Grizzlies, and it was a no-brainer trade if I'm the Memphis Grizzlies. Another trade that happened is the Wizards swapped Chris Paul and Jordan Poole. They add through the Wizards. Let me pull it up because I have it right here before I just try to remember this off the top of my head, because I'm not. So the Warriors sent Jordan Poole, a protected first-round pick in 2030, and a second-round pick in 2037 to the Wizards for Chris Paul. That was a big trade. That was a really, really big trade and a really, really big deal at the time. Jordan Poole is a good player. I want to get that out first, because I think throughout a lot of the discourse that had happened throughout the playoffs, a lot of discourse that happened even in the beginning of the regular season when Draymond punched him, throughout the season, he was up and down. He was inconsistent, and especially in the playoffs. I want to make it clear, Jordan Poole is a good player. I think he's actually going to do really good on the Wizards. New scenery, new city, put all that stuff between him and Draymond behind him. He is a champion at the end of the day, and he contributed real impact to the Warriors winning that championship. He was just as vital as anybody else on that team, and he played real minutes, and he was really impactful in that Warriors championship run. All that being said, I don't think that the Warriors could have moved forward with Jordan Poole and Draymond Green on the same team together. When Steph or Clay was off the court, mainly Steph, but when Steph was off the court, Jordan Poole was looked at as the secondary go-to ball handler, the guy who's going to run the second unit, the guy who's going to have the ball in his hands and make the decisions to run the offense. There were times during the 21-22 season, the year they won the championship, that he looked like he was capable of that. during last season, during the playoffs, he did not look like he was capable of running a second unit. Now, so what do the Warriors say we're going to get? We're going to get the best floor general in the NBA. We're going to get one of the best floor generals of all time. We're going to add Chris Paul to this unit. Now, personally, I'm split. I see both sides of this. I see the good and the bad. On the good, like I said, they get a floor general. They get a guy who can run the second unit. Yes, I think Chris Paul should and will come off the bench for them. I think he'll. It doesn't sound amazing, but they did it a lot the year they won the championship, where it would be Poole, Clay, and Steph on the court together. We've seen it happen. It's not impossible. CP3 also is known to be a guy who, the Warriors don't always do this, but there may be some times where they're either in a slump, Steph's not necessarily hitting the shots, Clay's not hitting the shots, and they're scrambling for some offense. Chris Paul has proven to be a guy who can slow the ball down, get to his spot on that little free throw, elbow jumper extended, and knock down that jumper at a decent, respectable clip. On the flip side, Chris Paul's 38 years old. Chris Paul's not the defender that he used to be. I'll give him solid because he has the mind to be a solid defender, but his body doesn't move as fast as it used to, excuse me. I don't think it will be an issue, but the other, I guess I'll say, downside of this is Chris Paul and Steph. I don't say even 2016 to an extent once Kevin Durant got there, because then he was on the Rockets and that Rockets team took them to 7. But those Warriors-Clippers games, if this ain't your first stream, you've heard me talk about how much I loved that Warriors-Clippers back and forth era. I'm excited to see this for Chris Paul. Chris Paul is biased, one of my favorite players. He's my favorite point guard of all time. There's no bias hidden there. He's my guy. I think the Warriors is an opportunity for him to play for a contender again. I like the move. It comes with a lot of questions, but I think some of the best moves, or the moves that have the potential to have a really big impact, there's good in both. There's good and bad to all those types of moves. The moves that are like, oh, this could be something big, there's an upside and a downside to it. It's a risk, but I like the risk. Larry says Warriors need some size, not a 38-year-old point guard. I agree to an extent. Absolutely phenomenal. I would like to see a improvement at maybe at the power forward or the backup big, but looking just around the league, I don't know. Or to me, it wasn't a lot of options out there available for them to make a move to get bigger. I think they saw opportunity to go after Chris Paul because I think they felt like they needed some depth at the guard position more than they needed some depth in the front court. And we'll get into some free agency, looking at some guards later on in the show. But looking at some of the free agent guards that are available, I think they were better off, or I think they felt that they were better off of making a swing at Chris Paul and trying to continue and stretch out this championship window as long as possible. They say new GMs want to do their things. New GMs want the future. The new GMs, new owners, whatever, want the future success of their team to feel like it came from them and not feel like they just continued on what the last guy did. It's dumb as it sounds. Eagles are a real thing. I expected the Warriors to move off of either Poole or Draymond. Well, we'll get to Draymond in a second. But I wish Poole the best of luck. I think the Wizards are going to be a good look for him. And I'm not mad at the trade for the Warriors standpoint. Nuno says, do you think Porzingis will be good fit in the Celtics? We talked about that last week. I do think he's going to be a really good fit. I think he's going to slide in like great. It gives him a lot of versatility. Some games he can start, some games he can come off the bench. He's like 40% from 3 on corner threes. He has the ability to catch and go off the dribble. He has the ability to give the Celtics finally a legitimate post-up option. They haven't had that over the last couple of years. They try it sometimes with Al Horford. They'll try it even with Grant Williams if he has like a guard on him. But Porzingis is the first guy in a long time that the Celtics have had that they can just say, hey, here's the ball in the post, go get a bucket. I love that for them. Hi, I'm new here. Do you recommend any team to support? Claudia, what's up? Thanks for pulling up to the stream. A new team to support, and you're new around here. I was about to say, I'm going to tell you to root for my Sixers, but I'm not trying to put that heartbreak on anybody. I'm going to tell you root for the Kings. Nice young team. They're playing Sacramento. They got a lot of upside. They have potentially a bright Pacers. Either the Kings or the Pacers. Two teams that are low expectations relative to the other teams around the league, and you're going to win some games and see some good basketball. Let's see. Shalat says that the Celtics fans don't want to cry when we lost our best defensive player and just a great dude. I understand that. Jordan Poole from Adrian. What's that? Hey, Jordan Poole is going to have a breakout season away from Steph Curry. I think he will. My boy, I don't agree with him to an extent, but my boy G says that he expects Jordan Poole to either be at 30 or be around 30 going into this season. I'm seeing like maybe 25, 24. I think he's going to be very inefficient. And that's the only knock that I think people are going to say about him. Midway through the season, we're going to look at his numbers. They're going to be not as efficient as we're used to seeing. But that's also going to be because he no longer has the gravity of Steph and Clay. And defenses are going to be honed on him now. Like the defenses are going to be looking at Jordan Poole as the first option to stop. And that's going to be something different for him. That's going to be new for him. We'll see how he does with it. I second the Kings. Yeah, the Kings, man. Watch the Kings. Watch the Kings. All right, moving on. We talked about Chris Paul on the Warriors. Let's talk about free agency. How far are we in? All right, about 24 minutes in. Perfect time. Right on time here. We're going to do some free agency talks. I'm not going to go over everybody. I think this free agency class is mixed in terms in the talent pool, and I'll explain what I mean by that. But just in general terms and just some stuff out the way, free agency officially starts, or at least teams can officially begin negotiations for free agency and talking to free agents Friday at 6 p.m., like this Friday at 6 p.m. Contracts can be signed as early as July 6th. And teams, I don't want to go into this too much because it's the weeds. You know how they say get lost in the weeds? The weeds of the new CBA are a jungle. You can get lost in the jungle that is the new CBA. But the NBA they announced that the CBA was signed and ratified, and it goes into effect on Saturday. Start the free agency process moving forward for the next up until the end of 2030. Like the CBA is good until 2030. But they put out it is 646 pages or 664 pages long. Obviously, I didn't read all of that, but they did put out a smaller document that kind of gave a way briefer rundown of the new CBA. The only thing that I'm bringing all this up to discuss, because I'm not like a trade guy. I'm not a contract guy. I'm not in a trade finder making sure money matches. That's not me. I let the people who get paid millions to do that, let the GMs figure all that out, and then I just like to talk about it on here with y'all. But the two things that I think we need to keep in mind, and I think that's going to really shape in a new way how this free agency season goes and how the rest of this off season looks in general, and even including trades, because I'm sure we'll see some more of them as the summer continues on, is these first and second apron levels. Essentially, all we need to know, or all you need to know, is that the first apron is essentially $7 million over the tax level. Like I said, arbitrary stuff. And then the second apron is $17 million over the tax level. And all you really need to know is with the first apron, there are certain things you can't do in terms of how you sign, when the team buys out a player and people sign, like say the Wizards buy out X player. They buy out Jordan Poole, and now somebody can sign him on a cheap contract later. If you're over that first apron, there's limits to what type of players you can buy that you can re-sign that get bought out. If you're over this second apron, there are even more restrictions. You can't trade for players that are on certain types of contracts. You can't sign players to certain types of contracts. And usually the types of contracts I'm talking about are what's called taxpayer exceptions contracts, meaning certain types of contracts that allow you to go over the cap, that allow you to be a taxpayer, and you can get to sign players for a less amount of money than a typical contract. A lot of teams have done this over the last couple of seasons to try to build competent championship contending rosters. The Warriors do this. The Clippers do this. I'm trying to think of other teams off the top of my head that are well over. Off the top of my head, those are the two main teams in recent history that are well over cap, that have, to varying levels of success, gone into deep pockets. They have really rich owners that are willing to pay crazy tax penalties to try to win championships. It worked out for the Warriors. It hasn't worked out for the Clippers yet. Those have always been a thing. All they're doing now is adding more restrictions to try to increase parity around the league. All that being said, do one or two things. They're going to do their best to stay below that second apron so they can have more flexibility to be able to make moves and make some signings that they want to make. So teams that don't think they're championship contenders, or teams that really just see themselves as a mediocre playoff team, which is nothing wrong with that, is that's where you see yourself. That's where you see yourself. They're going to try to stay under that second apron, because the penalties that you pay and the fees that you pay are way more than they've been in the past. So if you don't have to be a team that's over the second apron, you might try to let some players go. You might try to trade away some guys who honestly are decent, but maybe you made a mistake 3-4 years ago, sign him to a contract that he's not really worth, and now you're trying to get off of that money. So I think we're going to see a lot of movement this year. But on the flip side of that, I think teams that think they're championship contenders, who are close to that second apron and don't know exactly what they want to do, are just going to smash right through it. Look at the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns are a team that was close to that second apron, that were likely going to go over that second apron if they just bought out Chris Paul. Instead, they trade Chris Paul for Bradley Beal, and now they're definitely way over the second apron, but they got a new owner with deep pockets who are willing to pay the penalties and the fines, right? I say all that because the free agency this year, it's not bad, but it's not as good as years that we've seen in the past. Nav, let's go with you, my guy. Thanks for pulling up, man. Nuno, I like the Kings because of Neemias Queta? Neemias Queta, the first Portuguese player to be in the NBA. Oh, that's dope. That's really dope. Global game, man. It's a global game. So I want to talk about some notable guards that are coming up in free agency, of like some places where I think they can go, places where I would like to see them to go. But there are three, I guess, we'll say, notable guards I want to talk about. Kyrie Irving, Russell Westbrook, Fred VanVleet, all free agents this year. Kyrie, controversial year. Spent some time with this time with the Nets came to an end. Demands a trade, ends up on Dallas. They have some moments where they look really good offensively. They have a lot of moments where they look really bad defensively. And they realize, I think there's potential there, but they need to fix some things. It's looking like Ramona Shelburne reported, I think it was earlier today or late yesterday, that Kyrie is expected to return to Dallas, but he does intend to meet with other teams. He just wants to find a home. Defensive liability as they can be, I should say. I think the Kyrie-Luka matchup is a good matchup, is a good pairing. Offensively, they work very well together. They have this nice ebb and flow to them that we saw throughout the regular season, a lot of back and forth. I would like to see Kyrie stay at Dallas Maverick. Now, is that the end all be all? Is that going to solve all of their problems? Definitely not. They still need to find a way to fill out the rest of that roster to get some more defense around them. Or at least we're going to get a report that the Lakers are going to talk to him. I don't know how much the Lakers are actually going to make a legit move for him, but it feels like at least reporters and NBA fans, Kyrie and LeBron are forever connected. So there's this allure and at least want for Kyrie to go there. But personally, I'd like to see him remain in Dallas. I'm going to assume this isn't the actual overtime bag. And I'm going to assume, if I had to guess who this is, that this is VR. This is VR if I had to pick who this is. Let's go with you, though. Thanks for pulling up. Next guard I want to talk about is Russell Westbrook. So Russ, another guard who had a shaky first half of this season. Didn't work out with the Lakers, like at all. We knew from the beginning the Lakers should have... Adrian says the Lakers can't coexist with the rest of that roster to be able to play some defense and be able to hide the two of those guys defensively. And what does that look like? For me, that looks like wings that can defend, because they're going to need perimeter defense, because Kyrie and Luka aren't going to be able to give it to you. So you need to find versatile wings and a mobile big, which is a lot to ask for. And I don't think it's going to be a solve it all right now this offseason. I think the first step is signing Kyrie to prove to Luka that, hey, we're in this for the long term. Because if you don't sign Kyrie, Now Luke is thinking this team might not be where I want to spend the next 4 or 5 seasons because they can't put a roster around me. Like, those are the conversations that superstars probably start to have in their minds if teams start to look incompetent in terms of building a roster around him. Especially considering the guys they traded to get Kyrie there. If they lose Kyrie, it's a really bad look for them. All right. That's a good point, though. I'm not mad at Kyrie to the Lakers. I don't personally want it because I don't want that media coverage, and I feel like I'm gonna see the Lakers on my social media timelines all day, every day. That's more of a personal issue, but it would be a good fit for the Lakers. I ain't gonna lie. I want to talk about Russ. Like I said, we all know Russ. The Lakers trade was stupid. They should have never traded him from the Wizards. I think we all can agree on that. They're one of my favorite point guards all time. Undercover Thunder fan here. He looked good with the Clippers. Russell Westbrook showed he still has it. Russell Westbrook showed that he can still be Russ. And you look at his numbers and be like, well, Hawk, he was like low 40s from field goal, like low to mid 30s from three. That's what Russ is. He's never been efficient. Like, go back and look at MVP numbers. Go back and look at time with KD and OKC. Even go back and look at times with KD and Harden and OKC. He's never been an extremely efficient player. But what he is a player who's going to give you the production that he gives you, give you 100%. And when he's playing his way, he does make his team better. And he helped out his Clippers team a lot because this Clippers team is one of the few teams, in my opinion, that is built where he can actually thrive, because it is one of the few remaining teams around the league that is versatile enough that it has shooters at every position, has defenders at basically every position, has guys who can, comfortable putting the ball on the floor a little bit. There's enough versatility there, enough shooting here, enough spacing here for Russ to thrive. And personally, I want Russ to resign with the Clippers. Has the proper fit for Russ. And so, no, I'm not saying the Clippers should sign him just because because they feel sorry for him, desperately need a point guard. If they don't sign him, I don't even know who you sign. Do you sign Fred VanVleet? Like, there's not a ton of point guard options out there, is my point. Russ was a good point guard for y'all. You already know Russ. So I don't know. I'm not saying sign him long term. It might only be like a 2-year deal. We will see what the deal looks like, what the money looks like. I don't think it's going to be a ton of money. I don't think it's going to be a vet minimum either, but I don't think it's going to be a ton of money. I think Russ on the Clippers was a great fit, personally. Can't stay on the court together. And that is the other thing about Russ that I don't think it's talked about a lot outside of his brief stint of injury history when he was battling with Patrick Beverley in his OKC days. For the most part in his career, he's been fairly healthy. And I think that the Clippers, knowing they have guys like Paul George, knowing they have guys like Kawhi Leonard, and knowing they won't be healthy for a full season, having Russ to be that third guy, which I think is what they wanted John Wall to be, it just didn't work out. But having Russ to be that third guy who can step up when one of them aren't there is big for them. It's really good for them. Next I want to talk about real quick, Fred VanVleet. I'm a big Fred VanVleet fan. A lot of Raptors fans are telling me he was very inconsistent this year, which he was. I'm not going to get you wrong there. I think a change of scenery would be good for him. I don't see him returning to the Raptors. I don't think the Raptors want him to return, but I also don't think he's going to end up on a team that's really trying to make a good playoff run, or at least like a deep playoff run. Teams that I think could use Fred are the Bulls and the Rockets. The Rockets, because I've been saying for the last season and a half, they need a legit point guard, because as much as I love their young guards, they're not point guards. They're just not. They're talented, but they're not point guards. And I think Fred VanVleet can come and bring some vet leadership to that team and bring some stability at the point guard position, and a little bit of playmaking there would be good for them. And the other fit, I think, would be that Lonzo isn't playing, because like a year and a half ago, I remember at the beginning of the 2021 season, I made a TikTok basically saying that no one in the NBA has worked on their shot more than Lonzo Ball. And I truly, truly mean that still to this day. Lonzo went from a guy whose shot started on the opposite side of his head to a guy who was shooting almost like catch and shoot. He was at like 40%. He was shooting pull-up threes. He was aggressive with his three-pointers. He's an amazing facilitator. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. He's such a good point guard. Like when he was healthy, his last season with the New Orleans Pelicans and his first little bit of time with the Bulls before he got injured, he is such a good point guard. When I think about so many of the teams around the NBA and I think about Lonzo Ball's skill set, he could almost play on any team in the NBA and really thrive. And I mean, truly improve them. Like imagine Lonzo Ball, the current healthy Lonzo Ball on the Lakers, shooting, playmaking, defense, amazing. Imagine that on the Clippers, shooting, playmaking, defense, amazing. Shoot, I'll even say it. If there's a different world where the Sixers don't have James Harden, imagine Lonzo Ball in the Sixers. I would like that. Shooting, playmaking, defense. There's Miami Heat, team that was just in the NBA Finals. Shooting, playmaking, defense. Swap out Kyle Lowry for Lonzo Ball. Like, Lonzo Ball can have such a great impact on so many teams. It really just, it just sucks. Like, I don't have another phrase to say other than it really sucks that he cannot play and he won't play next season. I wish him the best. I really, really do. How long we been going? All right, 40 minutes. We got about 20 minutes. Another just team in general that I think have two big decisions to make coming up are the Milwaukee Bucks. Both Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton are free agents this summer. Chris Middleton actually just opted out of his $40 million player option the other day. I think it's very likely that Chris Middleton will try to restructure, get a new deal, stay with the Bucks. Honestly, I think both of those guys want to stay with the Bucks. It really just depends if the Bucks can afford to pay them, or another team doesn't try to steal them away. And honestly, I don't necessarily think it's going to be Chris Middleton that tries to get stolen away, or Chris Middleton that gets stolen away from the Bucks. Middleton is solid. He's really good. Don't get me wrong. Before his injuries over the last couple of seasons, people were arguing who's the better player on the Bucks, best in the league. I'm talking amongst Kyrie, KD, Chris Paul. Like, he were putting up very comparable numbers in terms of his mid-range game. Chris Middleton at a time before these injuries was him, right? But a little bit of inconsistency there. The defense ain't as much as we remember. He does look a little bit slower. So teams might be a little hesitant to try to give Chris Middleton a big contract. So I agree. To most teams, Middleton not worth $40 million. I agree with you there. So I don't think teams are going to try to steal Chris Middleton. I think the Milwaukee Bucks can definitely retain him. But I think teams are going to try to steal Brook Lopez. Listen to this. So Lopez this past season, now he is getting a little bit older up in age, so I don't know if it's necessarily going to be a long-term deal, but I can see teams at least trying to meet with him to make him an offer. Lopez this past season, he led the NBA in total blocks and contested shots. He contested 1,000th most amongst all defenders who defended at least 100 shots at the rim. He also helped on more drives than any other player in the league, which led to the Bucks having the second best defense against drives in the regular season. There's a reason people were campaigning for Brook Lopez to be Defensive Player of the Year last year. There's a reason he was in the conversation. He was a finalist. Brook Lopez had an amazing season last season. And that's on top of his ability to still stretch the floor. And that's on top of his ability. He don't do it as much, but at times you can still say, hey, here's the ball in the post, go get a bucket, pretend you got a Nets jersey on. I don't think it's a really good big man to have. A big man who can rebound like him, defend like him, shoot like him, and still be an interior presence at times. That is such a big, big piece of this team. And Uncle Larry, I kind of agree with you that at this point in their careers, at least so far, Larry is more important than Middleton to the Bucks. But I think because of that, the Bucks can keep Middleton. I'm gonna put discount in parentheses because I think Middleton can have a bounce back and can come back to his former self. But I think teams are really going to be looking to try to steal Brook Lopez from the Bucks. And I bring all this also up because if, say, Middleton goes somewhere else and say Brook Lopez goes somewhere else, Giannis is up for an so we will see. We'll see what happens. I'm excited to see what happens with the Bucks. The Bucks are one of those teams that I feel like I just have to root for because I really like Giannis. Even though they're in the same, conference as my Sixers. I'm really excited to see what happens for them. I'm really, really excited to see what happens with them. He would be excellent on the low. Yes, Brook Lopez would be excellent for the Warriors. Brook Lopez is one of those guys, just how I mentioned Lonzo could be good on 3-4 different teams. Brook Lopez could be good on 3, 4, 5 different teams. Excellent on a lot of different teams. I have a problem with the 7-footer shooting threes. However, he's a good player to have at the right price. He does block shots and rebounds. Yep, that is true. Rage, what's good with you, my guy? How are you? I am doing well. Good to see you. Thanks for pulling up. I'm doing good. Can't complain. The streams is back. I mean, it has been a while, but it's also been a while since we've been doing I've been doing the streams on a regular basis, so I ain't mad at you. But the streams are back. We're here to. Some other guys, like I was saying, outside of, I mean, even after mentioning Chris Middleton and Jan and Brook Lopez, you can see when I say it's not like big names in free agency this year. A couple other guys I want to talk about just real quick: Draymond Green, Dillon Brooks. Draymond Green, I really do think wants to remain a Warrior. We'll see what happens there. If he does not remain a Warrior, I want him to go to the Kings. I think they can use his leadership. I think they can use his defense. I think he can really fill the role that Harrison Barnes was playing a little bit, not so much in terms of scoring, but he'd be a really nice 4 option, small ball 5 at times. I just think he'd be really good in terms of leadership for that team. Dillon Brooks, I don't know where he's going to go. I'm going to keep it a bean. I think there are a lot of teams that can use his skill set, a defender who is a slightly below average 3-point shooter. If he can prove to a team that his head's going to be on still good and then maybe signs for something bigger next offseason or in 2 years. But that's a team that the Rockets, I think, is a team that's really interested in him based on the rumors I'm seeing. Very similar to what I said about, who did I say earlier when I mentioned the Rockets? Fred VanVleet. Just they could use some vet leadership. I don't know if he's the vet you want to lead your team in terms of, because of what we've seen from him last season. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? But if he can prove to a team that is like, yo, I was crazy, I was wilding out, you know what I mean? I'm a young guy who got a lot of money. Like, if he can prove to these teams that I'm here to just hoop, he can really be a good asset for a couple of teams. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything we want to go over today. The last thing I have written down is some Damian Lillard. I literally just have written down Damian Lillard again. We're at that point in the offseason where it's will he, won't he? One report says that the Trailblazers are committed to building around Dame. Then another report of a youth movement. But then they still drafted Scoot Henderson anyway, who plays point guard. And his number is going to be 00, and Dame's is just 0. So they drafted your replacement. Like, there's so many questions I have about Damian Lillard and the Portland Trailblazers. I respect it. I respect him wanting to stay there. I respect him wanting to be known as a guy who, you know, at the very least stayed on his same team and didn't go around chasing rings. That's admirable in itself. So many people, you'll see the discourse on the internet and discourse on Twitter and stuff like that, that Dame needs to win a championship to be remembered. I would push back on that and say, honestly, in my mind, he's going to be remembered. Even if he doesn't win a championship, if he just stays on the Portland Trailblazers for the rest of his career, simply because of that, of how good his career has been so far, his individual statistics that he'll have, rank up some more All-NBAs, rank up a couple more All-Stars, he'll be remembered, even if he just stays a Blazer forever. They're going to put a statue out for him in front of their arena, and he'll go down as the greatest Blazer in NBA history, or at least one of the greatest Blazers in their history. And the only reason I am iffy on him moving and winning the jump ship, I don't think that'll happen. I think he wants them to try to win a championship, but I'll be honest, Dame, with the assets that they have, with the players that they currently have, I don't see a world where the Blazers can legitimately build a championship contending team with the pieces and the amount of money that they currently have. They can definitely build a team that can make the playoffs. They can definitely build a team that can, you know, be a great second round matchup, be a great second round fight. But I don't think they're going to build a championship contending team. So, yeah, exactly. Lillard feels comfortable in Portland. Let him be. And I hope that's his mindset. Personally, just as a fan of his game, I'm not really a Portland fan, but I rock with Dame. I hope his mindset, or a different scenario, even thinking to Vince Carter's last couple of seasons when he was moving around the league a little bit, that if you embrace the youth movement and just turn it to a mentor for the young guys, you know, still out there, still getting your All-NBA, still getting your All-Stars, like I said, but just stay in Portland. And stop doing interviews telling people you want to win championships because it's not gonna happen. Oh man. Uncle Larry, appreciate you. I dig your podcast, Hawk. Keep putting it down. Hawk, your podcast off the hook. I will be back. I appreciate both of y'all. Lillard doesn't want to leave the Blazers. At that time, honestly, well, free agency will have started. I'm sure we'll have some more rumors and stuff to talk about. Or I might come up with a nice little fun something for us to do. I will see y'all next week. I'm out of here. Peace.